If I just have a quick check around the room and see who's with us. I know I've got Jerry Brown. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm good. And James Hall.
Hey, how are you doing? Nice to talk to you.
I'm great, James. Feeling great since the weekend with the rugby, but we'll get on to that in a moment. We've got Di Brown. Welcome, Di.
Good afternoon. How are we all doing?
I think we're all still on a high, Di. So hey, let's go. Let's get into that in a moment. And Mike Willoughby. Welcome, Mike.
Hi guys, looking forward to this.
Okay, good stuff. So, hey, the purpose of our podcast today is to reflect on England's performance at the weekend against the All Blacks. I think we had a bit of a win there. Being quoted as England's best performance ever by Clive, no less. So, pretty outstanding. But what we want to do is just sort of reflect on actually the evolution that we've had to get to that space, certainly from the 2015 World Cup, which was a bit of a disaster. So, what were the key moments for you guys, and what did you take from them? Who wants to kick off?
Shall I start, Dave? For me, it starts from way back before the actual match itself, and just thinking about the fact that the team haven't just arrived on the pitch on Saturday fully equipped to perform by accident. This has been a long and painful journey over the previous years for them to prepare and go through the setbacks and difficulties that they've gone through, which has equipped them to be able to perform at this level, given all the hard work, team selection, and the depth and the strength of the team. So I just wanted to make that point. If we think about how teams actually evolve, it's never a straight line. It's always going to involve setbacks and difficulties that you have to overcome.
So Jerry, I think I heard ex-England players actually talking about Eddie Jones's arrival in after the last World Cup, and talking about he walked into the room and said, "I see the 2019 World Cup winners here," and they all sort of fell on the floor or started laughing, based on the way that they'd crashed out in 2015. So it must have taken a certain amount of vision on his part to foresee how they're going at the moment, and let's not second guess what happens on Saturday.
No,
but it was a big start, though, eh?
Hi, Dave. So one of the things, Jerry's just mentioned about being mentally prepared, but my gosh, who has ever been as mentally prepared as those guys were when they lost those 2 tries? When not one but 2 went against them, and the fact that, through incredible resilience,
Agreed.
they continued to play incredibly well. I mean, there was no sign that even when they heard the referee's decision and the TMO, they just kind of dusted themselves and got on with it. And I thought that was remarkable to watch. Absolutely outstanding.
It was.
And they didn't even look like they had to reset as a team, did they?
No.
It looked like they just carried on absolutely religiously.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating to me that really they demonstrated one of those absolute fundamentals of what makes a high-performing team, which is that they all completely relied on one another and they all shared success and failure. So when something did go wrong and people made mistakes, there was absolutely no sign of recrimination, no sign of disgust, anger, or frustration. They simply turned around and got on with it again. And I thought, that really showed genuine mutual respect and trust. And the moment when England gave away a try, which was, after all, a pretty serious mistake, there was nothing, no backbiting, no trouble, and the other part of that, which hugely impressed, was that not only did they show one another respect, but they actually showed enormous respect to their opposition, and that it was almost friendly, despite the sheer violence of the game. And I thought that was immensely impressive from both sides, actually, and again showed complete control and trust in one another, which is just absolutely the hallmark of a high-performing organisation.
Yeah, agreed, James. It's the reference we made earlier to keeping a blue head. I thought both teams demonstrated that beautifully in all circumstances.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we all love about rugby is the way they respect the referee, who I thought controlled the game with scientific precision. You may not have agreed with all of his decisions, but he handled everything so professionally, I felt. The other person I wanted to refer to, which we haven't talked about this week so far, was Farrell when he was injured. And he kept going right through the game. I thought that was also tremendously resilient on his part.
Yeah, I was sort of caught up with the contrast between where Farrell was and George North in the Welsh game. Now, clearly there were different injuries, and Farrell had identified that I think it was just before half time he got the injury, and he wanted to sort of carry on through till half time because he knew he could probably get the treatment that was going to get him back up and running without into a fairly sort of decent space. But I thought the way that he did that was absolutely superb. But he put himself in positions there where he wasn't exposing the team, whereas North started by putting himself in a position where he would have been exposing the team at that point, and actually it looked like he'd have to take a prompt to actually come off the field in order to be replaced by somebody who could execute his position competently.
And that was I thought that's absolutely right, David, and there was that contrast, the Welsh South African game. But in both those games, what you did see was this sort of frustration amongst players when their own peers got things wrong, and you could see it on people's faces. You actually watch the language, some of which was fairly fruity and was aimed at their own people, and that never ever happened in the England camp. And we all know it used to happen. It used to happen even quite recently. We used to see that. But this time around, it simply never allowed to go there. I can't believe that anybody except the coach can take credit for that. That is something he's brought to the team, taught them, and they've learned and accepted, and that's hugely impressive, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree, James. And Jerry mentioned Farrell, and I suppose what we see is this sort of is the way that leadership was working there. So clearly, Eddie Jones is the leader of the group, as the coach. But one of the observations we've got in relation to how that then transitions to the players, to the head of or into match day, and what reflections we might see from that, because we work with some senior teams in big organisations, and there's got to be equivalents out there.
Well, I think he demonstrates absolute unshakable confidence in the players to go on the pitch and do their jobs, and in our language, letting go, if you like. He can't go on the pitch and play the game for them. They get mentally prepared through all the practice and preparation. Success that they've achieved throughout the tournament so far must fill you with confidence. It's no guarantee of success, of course, but mentally it's the best position to start from. But I think it's just magnificent the way he trusts them and lets them get on with it. I think, James, you were referring to the fact that he steps back and trusts them to implement the strategy that they've prepared.
Yeah, I think that's bang on the point, Jerry. I mean, there is a difference, of course, isn't there, between coaching in this sporting world and coaching as an independent advisor to an organisation in the commercial world. I mean, a rugby coach is effectively a general. He doesn't necessarily stand on the battlefield and fire his rifle himself, but he selects the people, the equipment, he positions them, he writes the strategy, and he's there to help people control things. But then he lets go, and he lets go, and he trusts people to get on with things. Now, there's a difference there, which is relevant to the way that we work with people in the commercial world, where of course in the end we don't take responsibility for their decisions in quite the way that Eddie Jones has to. But I think that the really important thing in here is that a really great leader, and in my mind that Jones is a great leader, first of all engenders the trust of his people, because his strategy is so sophisticated. And I think we can talk about the strategy that he used on the day and how that contrasts with others. and he gets that respect and that trust from his. He he lets them get on with it. He gives them the authority and the skill to do what they need to do, and then he steps back, and that's a hugely powerful thing to do, to trust your people. He said it this morning on the papers. He was reported as saying, you know, there comes a time when a coach needs to know it's time to stop interfering and step back and let them get on with it.
Yeah, very good. I absolutely agree. And I love the way he gets them ready and they go on the pitch. The confidence that they displayed in the face of the hacker is well documented over the last few days. The V shape must have had a modicum of effect on the psychology. So they then got off to such an amazingly fast start, piling on the pressure. The intensity and physicality of the game just carried on right through the game. There was no let-up. They didn't fade in the last 10 minutes. And it was magnificent to watch. And I love the way Eddie Jones says things like, well, we haven't actually achieved anything yet, which is a stark way of helping them recognise the fact that the final is yet to come. No complacency at all, and reminding them to keep focused and prepare for a different match. Maybe we should talk about the final.
I think, Jerry, I was just sort of reflecting that, going into the final and the way that England and Jones have adapted through the tournament so far, it's been really quite interesting because you've got, I think the identity of the team is very clear. It's been clear throughout. They know who they are. We know where the leadership, it exists. The sort of the forward Farrell axis, Itoje in the forward line. We're seeing different levels of leadership in the way that shows up. Different levels of sort of visibility of leadership. So there's certainly identity there. The strategy overall. Has remained sort of firmly played, but the tactics in each game have been where we've seen that sort of flexibility. So whether he's the Australia game, wasn't it, where he dropped forward from the starting lineup and decided on a different strategy in order to, or was it Argentina? But decided on a different approach. Because that was right for the team, but it was most definitely, they were there. So playing it was England absolutely not trying to burn everything up, and I'd be really intrigued to see what he does against South Africa because South Africa is a very different side to what we've seen with the All Blacks.
I totally agree with you, Dave. I think you'll find with the South Africa game, whilst they play the kicking game against Wales, they'll be different again. I think there'll be more running. I think that's their natural style of actually playing. I think also I'd like to actually add in the focus each time he sets the team up prior to the game and what he brings through when the players are actually out there as well, the alignment of the team and the way they work together for each other. I think it's just amazing what the guy's doing now. Yeah,
I agree. Support, mutual support on the field is wonderful.
Totally.
I mean, Dave, the thing that strikes me as an ex-soldier, and having spent quite a lot of my life in military strategy, has been that what Jones seems to me to have done so far, and as one sincerely hopes he can do it again for the final, is to follow that very old military principle, which is to pit strength against weakness. If you look at the way, to my eye, the way that the Welsh South African game went the day afterwards. What appeared to be happening was you had two sides playing for their own strengths, and as it happened, playing directly against their opponent's strengths, and you were pitting strength against strength, and that isn't always a particularly good idea. The military theory, which is a good one, I think, says you take your own strength, you identify the enemy's weakness, and you try to put it together. And that seems to me to be what Jones has done very cleverly with his team. He's explained to them that every game is different, every opponent has his own weaknesses. And that England must develop their own strength to match those weaknesses and change as the games change. And brilliantly against the New Zealanders, where he exactly identified what they were less good at, and then made mincemeat of them. And I'm saying from a biased point of view, one very much hopes that he's got the same strategic and tactical clarity to go when they move into the final.
I can imagine it that I did see Eddie Jones in the audience watching the match on Sunday morning, as I'm sure we were all glued, and he was there with his notebook and pen, so he was clearly watching every single one of them. But let's face it, we're all going to be watching, is it Leclerc again? I mean, that guy was phenomenal. He was all over the match like a rash. He was everywhere. So I think he's definitely somebody that we're all going to be watching with anticipation on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think when you reflect on the Wales South Africa game, what South Africa didn't want to do was play an open, expansive game, against those Welsh backs. So they wanted to keep it very tight in the forwards, and broadly they managed. They succeeded in doing that. And it was pretty attritional and pretty horrid to watch, wasn't it? But if you look at, I guess where there was a strategic win in that game, it was in their ability to do that. So looking forward then into the final, what's our calls? Where do we, can they do it? And where do we see the strengths or the weaknesses, maybe?
Well, I think that they definitely can. Obviously, we're going to hear from you guys who know a lot more about rugby strategy than I do. But the confidence and mindset going into it must be as high as it's possible to be for such a massive event. So from a confidence and mental strength point of view, you'd have to say we've got to be favourites, which is probably dangerous to say. Strategically, I don't know. What would you guys think?
My inclination is to believe in Eddie Jones. I think, say the extraordinary thing about him is his ability to identify the weakness of the opponent. I still think that both South Africans and the Welsh played one another on the basis of their own strengths. I think he does that. I think he identifies weaknesses and then he develops the skills amongst his own people to take them on. And if he can pull that trick off again, we'll see potentially a very different England side playing a very different game equally successfully. And as that's the case, then it can be quite clear that it's down to his leadership and his coaching, because it needs the intellectual clarity that can then be turned into the brute strength of the rugby pitch.
Very good. Mike, you were talking about them South Africa playing a more running game. What do you mean by that?
The box style normally is a very expansive game and a running game rather than a kicking game, which is what they played on Sunday for Welsh. So they've got the natural runners in their team. They've got the natural grafters as well. So my view would be that they'll probably play more of an expansive game this week coming rather than the kicking game they played against Wales. And I think that actually plays into our hands to a certain extent as well, because it's the way we seem to be liking to play at the moment too. I think we just got to be careful we don't get too bogged down in some areas of the pitch.
How about you, James? What do you think the strategy's got to be?
Yeah, I can't claim to know the South African game clearly enough, but there is a danger in that, isn't there? That if you have two sides that both play broadly in the same way as describing, that you can actually end up with something of a stalemate. The most interesting contests so often are between teams that operate in different ways, and you can see that in a commercial environment as well, where people are in the same market but approaching the problem in fundamentally quite different ways. And that's usually the point at which somebody achieves significant domination. I mean, if two organisations evolve in parallel, doing the same thing and doing it in very much the same way, then by the nature of things, they're liable to end up pretty much equal to one another and knocking one another over the head for very small marginal gains. And the real success is when somebody comes along and disruptor. And I like to think that in Eddie Jones, England has found a genuine disruptive leader. With disruptive ideas about how to intellectually outmaneuver his oppositions, and that's a wonderful thing to see, as I say, in a really violent, physically demanding game. And ultimately, it comes down to people who think and have psychological strength at the same time as they're actually physically going out and doing the work they have to do. And that's to me, it's a huge lesson.
Dave, you're the strategist at rugby. What do you think?
Well, one of the things that Jones did right from the outset was he brought the when he first arrived, he brought in with the young players, the under-18s and the under-20s, leadership development, and previously it was all about player development. So when Itoje hit the first team squad, he'd already had coaching on his leadership. He was already getting support in that space, and many a player has arrived since who have been having that sort of development work. So instead of letting that develop over a longer period of time and waiting until they're a mature player towards the last sort of third of their career, actually when they're hitting the peak of their physical performance, the objective was to get them to peaking in around their ability to lead themselves and others on the pitch. And I think that for me is one of the big things we're seeing the difference with Eddie Jones's England compared to any other version that we've had over the years, and feels like it's peaking at the right point now in 2019. So I'm eternally optimistic about Saturday, and I'll firmly nail my colours to the mast and say I'm looking for a strong England win. But Eddie Jones is the past master at the strategy, and I'll leave that to him.
That's probably a good spot to finish on, actually. That we're all super optimistic about the potential for England to win.
Okay, so thanks guys. Thank you for this edition of the UpAGear Team Cast, and let's all enjoy the game on Saturday. And hey, let's pick up afterwards and see what we can extract from that once we've finished celebrating.
Fantastic. Let's enjoy the game, everybody.
Have a great time, and cheers.
Cheers. Here's to England.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.